Hello, everyone. We're going to get started here. I still see a few people joining, so I'm going to give it just another couple of seconds. As we prepare, they have asked that we keep our cameras muted or off through this process because they're going to be recorded. So for confidentiality reasons, you'll all be able to go back and review and listen to the presentation, but they have asked that cameras be off to protect your identity and confidentiality reasons. You're all coming in with a mute mic, so that's good. Keeping your mic mute unless you're talking will be helpful as well. So I'm going to kind of watch here till the numbers stop moving. It looks like we have about 54 people online. That's awesome. So I don't know about you all, but being quarantined already messes up with the days of the week, and now with it being a holiday weekend, it's like, what day is it and what time is it? So getting bearings there on what day and time it is. So there is a chat box. If you're not familiar with Zoom, if you look at the toolbar at the bottom, you should be able to see a chat that you can participate in chat as we move along. And we'll be getting started here just as soon as it looks like we have everyone or close to everyone joined with us. We're up to about 62, so we're getting a little closer here. If you would like to go ahead and go to the chat box and tell where you're from, what school district, what you teach, we can kind of get the feel of who's in the class today. A lot of people out of the state of Kansas. That's pretty awesome. Lots of different content and grade levels in the group. Seeing some names on there that are kind of familiar, so I think some of you I maybe had in class or met you in person. That's awesome to see you all again. Okay, I think we're going to go and get started. I see a lot of people still coming in there, kind of watching everyone from all over the state and a lot of other states too. It's really exciting to have you all here today. We're up to about 69 participants on, so 70 just joined us. So a big group on today. We'll see. Nice. Okay. Well, our topic for the day is using choice boards in a differentiated classroom. And I'm going to kind of go at it both ways today because it's a very useful tool in a classroom to begin with. And I know we have all been in online formats and are on call, I guess, that we could go on online formats again. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time sharing how to use choice boards, but also using them in an online format where you may not be with your students all day long, where you have short sessions. So we're going to kind of be working with that today. So my name is Melissa Reed. I am a professor at Emporia State University. I am in the education department. I teach, my doctorate is in literacy, but I'm very much in tune and research everything around that idea, because literacy is really in everything we do. Anything that you read, write, see, view, listen to has literacy component to it. So I'm very interested in adolescent literacy, second language learners, literacy environments or learning environments in general. online formats, flexible seating type formats. My son attended a charter school when he was a middle school student, which has been a while back, but kind of when they were some of the first innovative things happening. So I'm very interested in how do we engage kids in learning and what does that look like? So one of the classes that I teach at Emporia State, which is a graduate level class, is on differentiated instruction. So the choice boards that we're going to be learning about today and how to use those in a classroom and how to assess them and those questions that you have will come from the world of differentiated instruction, because that's where the research is rooted. So some things I want you to think about as we go forward. I'm guessing some of you are kind of familiar with choice boards, and you may have questions about like how to assess them and how to set them up. And I want you to really think about, you know, what's the purpose where you're using them. When I work with my students in my classes, we always talk about what's the right tool for the job. Are you using it in the right place at the right time? So we'll be talking about that. So I'm going to do a presentation and then I'm going to give you time at the end to ask a lot of questions. So if you have questions, jot those down, because at the end I'll let you unmute your mic and ask questions and I'll try to answer those to the best of my ability and send resources if that's helpful when this session is over. And you can also post questions in the chat. I will say because the chat scrolls really quickly, I might be more inclined to miss them there. So if I do, you can email me those questions as well. So I'm going to start here by sharing my screen so you can see the presentation. My mother was a switchboard operator back in the old, in the old days when phones were run that way. And she tells stories about the multitasking. And I always think about that when I'm doing a Zoom session, all the multitasking that occurs when you teach online like this. So it's always kind of a fun memory as I move into that. So we're going to talk then a little bit about how we can use choice boards as a practical resource in a classroom to allow for flexible learning to occur. So we have 4 basic learning outcomes for today: using choice boards to differentiate instruction for learners, discuss how digital choice boards can be used in an online format, determine how choice boards can motivate student learning, and also I would throw with motivation, manage student learning as well, and then determine how to use rubrics to evaluate the student choices, because sometimes that's a real question teachers have. So as I said, choice boards come from research on differentiated instruction. So I want to start there, because if you're going to do some research on your own when we leave this session or this workshop on choice boards, you really need to be looking at what's rooted in what we call differentiated instruction, which you're all familiar with. So kind of to go back to that broad research base that these come from, just to kind of start there, give us a starting place. Differentiated instruction is a very broad term that refers to a variety of classroom practices which allow for differences in students' learning styles, interests, prior knowledge, socialization needs, and comfort zones. Sometimes I think we get kind of caught up in differentiated instruction being, the low group, the medium group, the high group. Differentiated instruction really networks across all of those levels, and you're differentiating for different reasons. Choice boards tend to address all of these, to be honest, but particularly focus on those learning styles and interests also including choice. We know that our learners have autonomy, and this is even true of adult learners, and I'll kind of talk to you with my college classes as we go along and give you some examples at all the different levels in which I've used choice boards. When you have some choice in how you get to demonstrate your learning, or in how you choose to learn, and you choose something that's interesting or relevant to you within the teacher's topic, you're more likely to become engaged and motivated. And with engagement and motivation also becomes that management piece. Managing in an online environment itself is it's very difficult. I'm sure as you've gone into this this new world that we live in here starting in March, you find that particularly young kids, you know, they don't want to sit there in front of the computer for an amount of time. It's very difficult to keep them on task. So we can learn some ways in which that we can start that engagement process, but then kind of turn them loose into some areas of interest or choice that then will meet those socialization needs and those comfort zones, which will increase the student engagement and the time on task with the learning. So choice boards or differentiated instruction in general always focuses on content, process, product, and learning environment. So content is, what are we wanting them to learn? We're wanting them to learn, you know, the parts of a plant. We're wanting them to learn the causes of World War II. We're wanting them to learn, so think about those things that you teach in your content classroom or your elementary classroom. You know, what are those topics that you teach? Fractions. Anything that you teach, that becomes the content. Those are your learning outcomes. Those are your learning objectives. So as a result of those learning objectives, then what's the process? And the process is your instruction. So we can use small groups, we can use direct instruction, we can use learning strategies. You know, there's tons of ways to process how we learn, the method in which we learn. So today our focus will be on using a choice board as our method, but you'll find as we go along, the choice board allows for a lot of different kinds of methods to be integrated into that board as well. The product is, how do they demonstrate knowledge? So in a traditional classroom, often we give students the same assignment and we have the same product. So they may be given a graphic organizer to complete on a story that they're reading. Everyone reads the same story, everyone produces the same graphic organizer, and that would be the product. The teacher looks then at that product, which is the graphic organizer, to determine whether or not the student could recall the details and facts or the interaction of the characters, whatever that learning outcome is. So those three pieces there are very connected to one another. So just really, I think for me, when I first started differentiating instruction and really getting a handle on how to do this, and thinking about, I'm going to turn all my students loose doing different things. Oh my gosh, how's this ever going to work? So I really had to keep focusing myself on, what is my intended learning outcome? What's the process I'm using to get there? And in this case is a choice board. And what products am I looking for? So my products change. In a face-to-face classroom, sometimes my products are more, you know, hands-on in the classroom. I have found in an online environment, you can recreate those same kinds of things. And today we have so many free technology tools like TikTok, and that came off my head to begin with, infographics, Google Slides. We have so many things that kids can use as a product as well to be able to demonstrate their understanding of the content or your learning outcome that you would like to see. The learning environment then becomes the environment in which the student is learning. So for a lot of our students here at the end of the year, or for all of our students at the end of the year, that learning environment became their home, and this virtual environment in which they were connecting with their teachers at the end of the year. In our classrooms, those cultural or surroundings can look very different depending on how you have your classroom structured. Sometimes choice boards are used within like centers or seat work in an elementary classroom. Sometimes in upper classrooms or elementary as well, you will see them used in like a project-based classroom. Sometimes you will see them as homework. They can be used as an extension of the learning in the classroom. So there are a lot of different environments in which these work as well. So we kind of want to look at all four of those things when we're thinking about how we're putting together a choice board. So for me, I'm going to share some of mine that I use in my own classrooms, and then share some that some of my students have created. So my content for me might be that they're reading chapters out of a textbook in which they're going to process the research. So it might be research that they're reading. So I'm wanting them to walk away with certain outcomes of the reading that they're going to be doing. So the process in which they're making sense of that content would be the reading. And then the product, then I usually give a selection of options on how to demonstrate their understanding of what they read. So we'll kind of look at what that looks like as we move along here and give you some examples. Choice boards typically take on basically three what I call formats. Sometimes they look like a bingo board. So if you think about bingo and having the letters across the top, usually in the center of a bingo board, there's a free spot or a choice spot. It could be used either way. It could be free. You don't have to do anything there. It could be choice, as in you get to choose anything on the board that you would like to do that's not within the bingo that you're creating. Tic-tac-toe boards tend to be 3 in a row, and we're going to talk a little bit about tic-tac-toe boards because when you use those, the children are creating a tic-tac-toe, so you want to be sure you set those up so that they're not doing 3 of the same kinds of things to make that tic-tac-toe. So there's a little bit of thinking that goes on there. And then there's what I like to just call a choice board. We'll look at some of those too. It gives a little more freedom of the kids to pick what they want to. They're not restricted to creating a bingo or a tic-tac-toe per se. And then the other thing that we'll look at today is what's called a menu. Sometimes I call them a dinner menu or a lunch menu or a cafe menu, in which there's a list of choices that they can have as well. One of the tricks to creating, I guess there's a couple of tricks about creating these types of boards, is one, you must have a variety of things for the students to choose from. And you really have to think about those learning styles. So everything cannot be reading and writing. So there has to be opportunities to write, there has to be opportunities to use technology, there has to be opportunities to sing and dance and perform and draw. I have a child in my life. My children are both adults, but one of my children was very artistic in art, and she always wants to demonstrate her understanding through something that's very visual and artistic. My son is a math, science, chemistry person. He's a very logical thinker and very problem solving. So he is the kid that would want to do the Rubik's Cube or do some kind of puzzle in order to demonstrate his learning. He would like to have some, detective story where he's applying those math and science skills to make sense of what he's learning. So you really want to not only understand the students in your class, you know who those students are. Who's my art kid? Who's my music kid? Who's my really logical thinker kid? And you need to make sure that those choices are on that board for those kids. Sometimes I get asked, well, how do they ever learn those other things if you're only, allowing them to work in their learning style? I think that's where like the tic-tac-toe board and the bingo board comes into play, because I can choose that I'm going to do this art, drawing a picture, and I'm going to do something with Play-Doh. But in order to get a tic-tac-toe, I'm also going to have to write a poem, or I'm going to have to create, a puzzle. So when you use those tic-tac-toe and bingo boards, it also kind of pushes kids into something that might be a learning style they wouldn't necessarily choose, but also gives them that comfort of the choices that are on that board that are very comfortable for them. Keeping in mind, you're, as the teacher, are always focusing then on the outcome, demonstration of learning. So it's been kind of fun recently because I've taught the differentiated instruction class for a long time, and I've used choice boards for a long time. But during the quarantine, as I've been on social media and looked at Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, you're seeing choice boards come up all the time for the quarantine, which is kind of funny. You see bingo boards, you slept in your pajamas, you cried. There's one there from ESU on watching sports. Or listening to games, homecoming, seeing those kinds of things on there. And then in the middle one is a contest that's going on here in Emporia right now, where if you're ordering from different small businesses here that are starting to open up, and you can create your bingo, then you can send your card in with your receipts and have your name put into a drawing. So there's some reward there to participating in these bingo type cards. So I think it's kind of fun to see kind of the world take on this idea of choice cards and bingo cards in this game-like format, in giving people things to keep them motivated, connected in their quarantine pieces. So I just want to pull these to your attention because I see them almost daily on the different social media places that I follow. So every time I see one, I kind of collect it because I think it's really fun. Because sometimes I hear teachers say, oh, these would never work in a classroom. And I'm thinking, here we are using them in a quarantine situation, which is really an interesting way to see them be used. So keep in mind that the activities that go on the board are selected by you. So sometimes we're a little afraid to use them because it's like, well, my kids will be all over the place. You create the board and you put the activities on the board aligned to your learning goal. Don't lose sight of that. The boards that we just looked at for fun and quarantine, there were probably not a lot of learning goals on there. I mean, that I cried today or that I, wore my pajamas all day. It's probably not something we would put on for kids unless we were working on like their social, emotional, mental health for the day. All of those quarantine boards tend to be working on that social, mental health piece. So when you're developing yours, make sure you're really focused on what your learning outcomes are. You're thinking about the specific needs of the learner. So you're thinking about the learning styles within the classroom and how you're allowing them to show their evidence of learning. So when you do this, providing the structure like this will allow your students to gain confidence and self-esteem. Everything on that board can't be easy. I don't think we build our confidence and self-esteem by completing things that are easy. Driving a car is easy for me. So when I go drive my car, it's not that I really feel good or confident in that. But if it's sleeting and ice outside and I'm sliding around and I'm having to drive more strategically and I get to my destination safely, then I have a little more confidence in my driving. So kind of thinking at it from that perspective. They can be used to practice learning, extend learning, and provide evidence of learning. And you're putting that demonstration of evidence back into the hands of your students. So Carol Ann Tomlinson is the research in which differentiated instruction and choice boards come from. So that's the researcher you want to look at. Rick Wormelli has kind of picked up the research where she has left. So I would say those two are the researchers you want to look at the most. Their research is most reliable in looking at using choice boards. So just a little bit more there on that idea of giving them different ways and a voice in their learning to demonstrate their understanding to you. Here's the motivation piece. Again, there's the readiness, the interests. You're still in charge. You do not lose control of your classroom by using this. And then the choice is in that curriculum or prompts that you're using. Your role, again, is to identify the choice board, identify the activities that are suitable for your learners, make sure they're aligned to your learning goal, talk to the groups, become informed about what they need or want, and then based on the choices or topics, make sure you're using higher level thinking skills. Because most often choice boards are used after you've done the instruction. This is the way for them to practice, extend their learning, or demonstrate their understanding. So choice boards would not be what you would use before you actually do the teaching. Here are some instructional advantages that we have, which we've talked on some of these already, making sure you're meeting the needs of your learners. You can still put your class in small groups, and you could have a learning choice board for the different groups if that is more manageable for you or makes more sense to you and how you're teaching students at different levels. Although I have seen kids at really low levels pick something very challenging and be successful, and watch them be very empowered in their learning. So some things to think about when you're doing the instruction using these. You will have fewer discipline issues because the students are engaged. They're getting to choose what they want to do. There's something about choice that makes it feel better about being able to do it. It doesn't feel as imposed. So you can see that reluctant learners become more motivated. They find something on there that appeals to them. Here are some questions that you can ask yourself, and I can send these questions to you, and also you'll have access to a video recording of this presentation. But these are really good questions. I put these questions in front of me every time, even now, and I've made hundreds and hundreds of choice boards. I always put this in front of me when I start thinking about how I'm going to put this together. And on that last one there, if you're working with adult learners or older learners, maybe no adult help, but no teacher help. You might even say that, So again, choice boards are in that place in the lesson structure where they're practicing and they're implementing. They're at the end of that scaffolding where they're in the we're past the we do, I show you. They're demonstrating the learning back to you. So really think about them being in that piece. Keep in mind that for young learners, sometimes I hear, well, I can't do this in kindergarten and first grade. You can, because choice boards can be used with using pictures. Also, I'm going to show some with you today where you can also use links and QR codes that will take the young learner to a video or an audio where they can still hear your instruction, that helps support those learners who maybe can't read as well. So here's an example of some with some images on there and some examples. You can kind of see their ideas of what a short vowel for kindergarten, first grade might look like. And one on the left is actually for older students. And you can see where the teacher has linked in. This one right here, we're going to talk about this a couple of times, is a choice board that has a little bit of a different format. So we talked about the choice board being a bingo board or being a tic-tac-toe. This one, the students can choose anything of the 9 squares, and depending on the intensity or the commitment to the process, so like creating an infographic might be worth more points than doing a poem. So you can see the different point values at the bottom, and then the directions at the top say they choose 25 points. So you can kind of balance and put your choice in that way too, to take away the restraints from a tic-tac-toe board or a choice board where they're or bingo, excuse me, where they're having to complete a bingo to be able to participate. Okay, again, I just want to remind you the focus is on learning outcomes and choice. I will tell you from experience that watching young classrooms, middle school classrooms, that if you've got worksheets in your board, it's probably not going to work well for you. You know, if the tasks are to complete worksheet 2 or worksheet 4 or worksheet 6, all you've done now is just made a worksheet packet out of a choice board. So you really want to make sure your activities on your choice board are authentic, they're engaging, they're fun, they use technology, they're hands-on, they're really looking at those kids' learning styles that they bring. So here are 3 questions to continually keep asking yourself. And again, I do this every time I sit down to create a board. I ask myself, why am I assigning this to my students? This is my college kids too. Why am I assigning this to my students? What am I wanting them to know, understand, and do as a result of me giving them this module in an online classroom or assignment for my face-to-face classrooms? What instruction am I going to have to do? That's the process. What instruction am I going to have to do for them to be able to learn this? So there's your scaffolding. What process am I putting in place? And then how are they going to show me what they've learned? How are they going to demonstrate their learning back to me? And I always think of different ways that are very authentic. If I'm asking my students, my college students, the importance of doing something in a lesson plan, then I'm going to ask them to write a lesson plan. I'm not going to ask them to fill out a worksheet about filling out a lesson plan. So I'm really looking for authentic things in that showpiece. I post these questions and those other questions on that previous slide in front of me every time I do a choice board, because I have found it's really easy to get lost in what you do. And then pretty soon you got activity, or I get activities on my board that's like, that has nothing to do with my learning outcome. And, so really thinking about keeping myself focused on what I intend for my students to demonstrate by choosing the choices on my choice board. So I use this as well sometimes, especially if I'm stuck and I'm trying to think of something. I think, oh my gosh, I have a student in my class who's really an art student and I'm not as artsy as they are. So what would be very beneficial to an art student, or my mathematical people? I think I'm not a real big mathematical person. So for me to help think about those kids, these are the kinds of prompts that help me make sure I have those things on the board for every kid in our class, because we aren't typically, I think the argument with learning styles in a classroom is that we have one learning style and that's the only way we learn. But really, if you look at the research, we learn different things different ways. So on our choice boards, we want to be sure we're offering all those options. So this is a really good template as well. And it also helps me make sure that when I put my board together, I can kind of use it as a checklist. Do I have something verbal linguistic on here? Yes, I have a poem. Good. Do I have something visual spatial on there? Yes, I have create a diorama. So I check, and I make sure. Do I have something that's body kinesthetic? Yes, I have them building a bridge, taking a picture of it and posting. So I kind of do this as a test to myself, again, to make sure I'm getting balanced. I just think once you get in the heart of making a choice board, you can get lost really easily. You can forget your learning outcome. You can forget those kids who have learning styles that are kind of different than you. If you're an artistic person, pretty soon you have everything artistic on your board and you've left everybody out. If you're a visual linguistic person like I am, everything tends to be read, write, sing a song type things get left off. So thinking really about making sure you're keeping a balance of all of those different choices on there. I'll also say at this point too, when you're using a choice board, the idea is to choose. So if you're asking the kids to complete everything on the board, you've defeated the purpose of a choice board again. The choice board should not be every student completes everything on the board. Otherwise, now you've just really created a list of assignments. So making sure that you're asking them to choose according to what you want them to have in their outcome. So here's a bingo board. You can see that this one's for a month, and be sure this one's a writing one. There'll be a class rubric you can see at the top in the directions, and there are options on there for the students to choose different things in order to practice writing. So the learning outcome here is that the students are practicing writing. So instead of having them write in a diary every day or a journal every day or writing prompt every day, they're given options to do some sort of writing. Now, I will tell you, I've seen this one used, and they did do it in a diary setting, but each day the students wrote in their journal or diary, however you want to say, whatever you want to call that, their writing notebook, and they chose something from their bingo card. Their bingo card was in the front of their writing journal, and they would mark each day and then correspond it to the date. So at the end of the month, when they turned that in, they had a bingo and they had a variety of prompts and choices that they had used. But again, they weren't required to do all of them. Sometimes I see that center free your choice as a free take a break. You don't have to do anything here. So you can kind of think whether that's a vacation parking lot or whether it's a choose anything on the board that doesn't create a bingo. So maybe I really want to do that left column down, but I really want to do that interview over there on the end. I can think about how that works into the free choice. I guess I would have to go diagonal there. So maybe I want to do a recipe, an email, instructions, and a book think aloud, but I really want to do that interview. I can move that interview over into that choice so that I have a diagonal bingo there. This is a poetry contract. So again, this kind of restricts the choices somewhat. And for some kids who become overwhelmed with choices, maybe giving them some sort of restriction like this might be helpful to those students. But this contract, each column has 3 choices, and at the bottom of each column, you make one choice out of each column. So again, you need to be sure there's different things going on in that column. I got to be sure that first column isn't all writing or isn't all drawing. So I really have to think. So I've got to create a rhyming wheel. I'm going to write a poem, and I'm going to interpret a poem. So, and the outcome is poetry. So everything on this board is kind of designed to look then at poetry. But really thinking about when you're looking down those columns, when you're going to limit that choice, that there's something in there for everyone, that there's actually a choice there. Here's a tic-tac-toe board. So again, you see the different kinds of learning styles. You see writing paragraphs, you see Venn diagrams, you see poetries, posters, performing a play, writing a song, dressing up, all of those kinds of things on the tic-tac-toe board. And this one's related to a book report. Again, on a tic-tac-toe board though, they need to have 3 in a row. So you kind of want to make sure when those 3 in the rows that you're looking, that there's a mixture of choices each time. In an online format, when my students do a play or a song or any kind of performance, role play, if they were dressing up like a character and doing a speech, I have them video that. I have them upload to YouTube and set it to private and share the link only with me. I find by using YouTube in that manner, it protects their privacy by sharing the link only to me, or they can upload it to a Classroom YouTube channel. You could run it through Google Classroom as well. For me, I'm always really careful about how much I'm downloading on my own computer. So it makes it easier for me just to click on that YouTube link and use it that way. But you might want to think about how those videos and songs and things are coming to you. But any of those performance pieces, I actually have my students video them doing those kinds of things. Usually if they write their own poem, a lot of times I ask them to read their poem because poets typically do that. That's an authentic purpose. You know, there are all kinds of open mic events where people can go in. So I always ask them, if you write a poem, I want you to do kind of an open mic and record yourself reading the poem, and then send me the transcript to the poem and your performance as well, because that's what we do with those kinds of activities in an authentic situation. This is actually a choice board from one of my graduate classes that's online. I put links in there so that they can click into examples and support and help and scaffold, because again, they're adult learners. So I want them to have an idea of how to do it so they don't get frustrated, but not tell them how to do it. So you can kind of see this one is set up by points too. So over in that 30-point column, which is the blue column, they're more intense. So they're writing a book, they're creating an original song, they're doing a dramatic performance. And by the way, sometimes families will get together and do those plays. They're so awesome. They're so much fun, and you can tell the family's having fun with those. There's an infographic in there. Those kinds of things take more research. So they're 30 points. And then you can see the 20 point. They can create a comic, a reader's theater script, a diorama, an explainer video. 15 points, a slideshow, getting the gist. By the way, the slideshow is images only. They have to represent their learning in images only, photographs. Getting the gist, where they're summarizing the reading. Public service announcement, which is fun because you can play a little bit with the ethos and logos and thinking a little bit about those crying puppies on those commercials that break your heart. You know, that's what I want them to do with that. They can write a recipe, and then in the shorter 10 points, create a TikTok, a meme, and there's a meme creator there, graphic representation of some sort, and write an original poem. So I would give a choice board like this to my graduate students, and I would ask them to do whatever they choose that equals at least 30 points. So I could do one big project and I can spend a lot of time on it and get my 30 points out of one project, or I could do 3 little projects, or I can do 2 15s or a 20 and a 10. So I have a lot of options here on how I can do that. If you notice, each one of my choices are also numbered. I do that so that when they're telling me what they're doing, I'm sure I'm clear on what it is. Because sometimes an original song and a dramatic performance might have a little music in it. So I want to be sure I'm kind of understanding what they're doing. So when they post or share their project with me, I always tell them to let me know what number project that they chose to do. So moving away a little bit from the idea of a menu, or excuse me, a tic-tac-toe or a choice board, or a bingo board. The other piece that you could look at here is what we call a dinner menu or cafe menu. So the menu looks just like you would think about in a restaurant. There's an appetizer. I always think of this as my warm-up, getting everybody, you know, warmed up and thinking about what they want. There's an entree. They choose one. Again, making sure all of those choices are there. Notice there's a picture, there's writing, there's a wrap. Side dishes, they're going to do 2. And then the dessert's optional. That could be extra credit if you like to do extra credit. So you can see how the dinner menu looks. This one's on photosynthesis. Again, this is one I use with my classes. This is a cafe menu that's actually a discussion menu. I use this for discussion prompts. So a little bit different way than you see that the dinner menu for photosynthesis. So this one, there's an appetizer to warm up the discussion. The main course it's a little more intense discussion prompts. They have to do a little research there, and they have to bring in what they've learned. The sides are more straightforward reflection type questions. And then for this one, the dessert is like the coffee and dessert you have at the end of your dinner when you're talking to your classmates. So I use the dessert in that manner on this cafe menu. So one really good resource to helping you go jump up on the digital side of doing choice boards, there's a resource called Shake Up Learning. When you go to that website, you can download their teacher's guide for free. And with that, you can kind of see some of the resources there. I put some pictures of, you can make some really fancy, you know, menus and tic-tac-toe boards with the resources that they have to share. And those resources can come through your G Suite on interactive learning menus. So I've also given a resource there, which is also on the Shake Up Learning. They walk you through that process on being able to do these in a digital format that can be attached then to your G Suite and come through your Google Classroom. So then I want to take a few minutes to talk about rubrics and how we assess this. If everybody's doing something different, how do I assess it? You know, if I have kids writing songs and I have kids drawing pictures, how do I assess it? Well, I'm going to remind you, this is where you really have to go back to your learning outcome. So if my learning outcome is students are going to demonstrate their understanding of the parts of a plant, that is my learning outcome. So it doesn't matter whether they sing about the parts of the plants, or they draw the parts of the plants, or they create a model of a plant part out of Play-Doh, or they you know, create a play about a plant growing. My outcome's still the same. So I need to be sure that my rubric is not focused on they sang 3 choruses in the song, or they colored the picture nicely, or they used 4 different kinds of Play-Doh. Those are the things I'm not wanting to look at. I'm wanting to look at, did they convince me that they understand the parts of a plant based on the demonstration that they just gave me in the choices that they prepared for me? So there are 2, just very quickly, which you know, there are 2 kinds of rubrics out there. One is analytic. A lot of schools use analytic type rubrics. They have that proficient, you know, improving, needs improvement, adequate. You see those kinds of categories on there. The only thing I would warn about using an analytic rubric is sometimes, again, if you're not really keeping yourself focused, they very much can become the student chose 3 things. The student created a tic-tac-toe. The students used a lot of color. The students were creative. I'm not really sure how you measure creativeness, but those are the kinds of things then you can kind of get in that muddy water, and then you become very, I think, upset as an instructor, and the students become upset because you're thinking, well, they didn't do a tic-tac-toe. Well, your learning outcome is not that they did a tic-tac-toe. Your learning outcome is that they correctly identified the 4 parts of a plant. They correctly identified the climate in which a plant grows, you know, whatever your learning outcomes are there. Really need to focus that analytic or those rubrics on those learning outcomes. So for me, I tend to use a holistic, because for me personally, I have a better chance of staying on those learning outcomes if I do it in a more holistic view. That keeps me from saying, the advanced was they had 3 parts of the plant, and the progressing being 2 parts of the plant. So it takes me away from that frequency counting and really looking at that whole learning outcome. Something else I like to do is write my dimensions or my criteria as learning outcomes. That also helps me focus. So making sure that your rubric doesn't become a checklist. So make sure your checklist is separate from your rubric. This tells how many, this is those directions, how many things they have to choose, how long the videos have to be, how long, you know, all of those kinds of, I call those housekeeping things. They need to be on those checklists. So if you're using that choice board, you might have a QR code or a link that takes them to the checklist. Your video must include, you know, be 3 minutes. Your video must include 2 or more characters. Those things all need to be on that checklist and in those directions on the choice board, but not then on your outcome of your grading rubric. So then your grading rubric then becomes very focused on the learning outcome. So you can see here is one where it's very written on the learning outcomes. The student has created a digital book that accurately informs readers of a particular custom, culture, tradition, or celebration. So you can kind of see what that looks like with that focusing. So I'm going to share then, these are some that my students have made over the years in my differentiated instruction class, and I've paired their rubric with it so you can kind of see. So here we have a choice board on the left. At the top, she says, choose any 3 activities. And you can see the hyperlinks in there that take them out to those checklists. You know, what is it I'm wanting this to look like? Here's a comic creator you can use. Here's the books you can choose from. Here are the directions to what this graphic organizer looks like. Here, so there's your checklist things are on that choice board, or they link out to the choice board. And then you can see the rubric then focuses on the learning outcomes. So this is a comprehension choice board. So you can see the outcomes then focus on the answering and asking questions and describing the characters and the parts of the story and comparing and contrasting the information and using the text features. So now the rubric is very focused on the learning outcomes, even though Johnny may have done a comic and may have done a Wordville and maybe did the hamburger organizer, and Susie maybe did a wanted poster and a biography and so forth. I can still look at all those different projects and still determine whether or not they comprehended by staying focused on my learning outcome and staying focused on that rubric. Here's another one. This is a menu. This one's math. And again, you can see the main dishes. They choose one, and she has 3 different videos that she's created there, which is kind of fun. One of them's a song. She's got a lot of different things going on there. A picture of using manipulatives. The side dishes, they choose 2. There's 2 options there. And then the dessert, she has her pieces there. She actually created her rubric then to align to those topics. So you see her main dish. And at the main dish, the outcome is the student creates notes that show, and she has what math outcomes that she wants there. Her side dishes are categorized by those outcomes, and her dessert as well. So it didn't really matter what they chose, she's still going to see those same outcomes. This is one that was done for preschool kindergarten, which was kind of fun. This is a young teacher that I had in the class, and his video, his number crunchers, was so much fun that he did as his demonstration. He actually is a runner, and he's jogging with his video, and he stops and he says, "Kindergartners, let's count to 5." And he does 5 jumping jacks, and he's demonstrating in the video. I mean, it was a lot of fun what he did with that. So you can see his choices on this choice board. He says, again, choose 3 activities. This choice board was made with that G Suite off of the Google. He used that, and you can see all the different counting things. Now you might say, well, a kindergartner can't read all that, or first grader, preschooler. That's true. So you have options of either asking a parent in an online, when we're working from home like this, or a para, or you're going to go over those choices with. You could also use one of the things I suggested with him, because he made the videos, was that he give a QR code in each of those boxes, and that way the students could just click on the QR code and see a video or a demonstration of what he was wanting for those. So you can support those young learners in that way. You can see his rubric is also very focused on the counting and the outcomes there. And then he's also aligned to his Kansas math standards there as well. So you could do that. That helps keep you focused as well. This is a read aloud choice board. And this person actually labeled the learning styles tiers. So you can see the verbal, musical, body kinesthetic. She did that to make sure she was really focusing on those different learning styles. And the book, they're all reading the same book, Courageous People Who Change the World. And you can see the choices there that they're choosing from. And again, if you look at her rubric, it's very aligned to her learning outcome: accurate retelling of the story, using appropriate details, understanding of the story, and application to courage, which is the theme that she was wanting to bring out. Notice nothing on that rubric says that they made 3 choices, or they colored neatly, or really thinking about those learning outcomes when you're measuring. Okay, so I'm going to open the board here, but before I do, at the end here, I just want to touch base on in the week of the 15th of June, there'll be other sessions online. There'll be 3-hour sessions. In that session, I plan to go in more depth on using TikTok and using some of those technology things that appear on those choice boards, and how to bring them in from that piece. So kind of an extension of that idea of where the technology comes. How do you take a picture of something? How do you build something in your home, take a picture and get it posted so that you can see from an online format? And then the IDT department here at ESU, if you take 2 paid workshops, you'll get a credit of undergraduate, or 3 paid workshops will give you a graduate credit. So if you're looking for college credit this summer to redo your license or move up on the pay scale, those are options for you. You will get an email here shortly that will give you a link to the evaluation, so you can give feedback on that as well. And my email here, you can find me at ESU Online too, but it's just MREED, and everybody's at emporia.edu. So you can email me questions. But I want to go back here to the group, and I want to open it up for some questions. We have about 10 minutes left, but I wanted to be sure and leave a little bit of time. So if you had questions or thoughts as you listened, maybe you tried choice boards and you've got a tip that I didn't share today, I just want to open it up to anyone who would like to come on. You can unmute your mic and ask a question or have a comment, I want to give you a few minutes to be able to do that.
I have a question. Will the 3-hour session show more like how to make them? Like, I know you kind of mentioned it a little bit, or is it more just?
Yeah, in the 3-hour session that I'm doing, we'll do more about, you know, how to teach kids to do those in an online format in particular, what kinds of digital tools you can use. So yes, how to create the choice board, how to integrate the technology within the board. I'll probably use some breakout rooms and give each group like a task to do and try it out and come back and do some teaching, sharing with each other as well in the 3 hours. An hour goes so fast, and I know a 3 hour is going to go even faster. Yes, we will have more in depth in those technology pieces.
Awesome, thanks.
I have some emails asking about my PowerPoint. I share everything. I was a classroom teacher for 20 years. This is my 35th year in teaching, and I'm all about Harry Wong, you know, steal, share, borrow. So if you would like my PowerPoint, you can just email me. And also, like I said, you'll also get a recording of this session. And so you'll be able to replay as well. Yeah, there's a comment in the box about using sports choice boards before. Some good things there too. Yep, those are the kinds of things we want to see. And I get that question a lot by physical education teachers, so it's kind of good to see that on there. You know, my physical education majors, they'll say, well, I don't see how I can do a choice board in physical education. I always kind of take them back through that process. What are you teaching? I'm teaching tennis. Okay, so up at the top, that's your learning outcome. So what do you want them to learn about tennis? Well, I want them to do, you know, something with the rules, or interview an athlete, or, you know, serve the tennis ball so many times, or I want them to be able to, you know, volley it back and forth so many times. Well, those then become the things that you put on that choice board that you measure then on the end. So the idea there about how many yards and touching bases, absolutely. And thinking about, you know, I think it's always, I mean, art lends itself to be very visual and performing. Physical education is very forming. So thinking of, and then how do you balance it? So my linguistic kid, I'm going to have them interview an artist, or I'm going to have them research, you know, a piece of art or an artist. I'm going to add those other pieces that may not always be create a painting. So it kind of works the same way for those performances as it does if you're a ELA person. If you're an ELA person, you want them to write, you know, pretty much all the time. So it's always balancing out what's missing off that board. I see a question on there. How long do you recommend using the same choice board? I would use the choice board till it's done. So let's say we've been learning the writing process in class, and we've been working on it. So now I'm going to give them the writing board that has those choices and processes on. I'm going to give them a deadline, however I want to do it, whether it's at the end of the month or the end of the week or 2 weeks, however I want to do that. And within that time, they have to make X number of choices, and then I'm done with it. It's nothing I would hold until they've done everything on the choice board. I would give the allotted time that I want to measure that learning outcome, whether it be the writing process or how to understand complementary colors on a color wheel, you know, whatever my learning outcome is. And then I would give it the same amount of time as I would anything in my classroom for them to get to the point they can demonstrate that learning. And however many choices I put on it, which are the practices, extensions, and opportunities to experience that learning outcome. And, you know, I'm not sure that I would say we would, well, I know I wouldn't say it's use the best tool for the best. I'm not sure I would choice board everything all the time either. There's other things. If the class is fairly new at learning a skill, I might be inclined to use a different kind of strategy because they need more scaffolding, more direct instruction from me. But when I'm to that point where I really want them to practice and be able to demonstrate their understanding back to me, it's not anything I mean, it's maybe a review, something we did last year, something they should know from previous math classes. This might be where I would use a choice board. Good questions. I think it's kind of hard as an educator to I know when I first started, it was kind of hard to wrap my head around, because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I have 30 students. I can't have 30 students doing 30 different projects. What am I mean, I'm going to be the one going crazy here. So it's really thinking about, like, again, focusing on that learning outcome and getting those pieces in place. So then when you've got that all aligned, it really becomes about, I'm looking to see whether or not these kids understand parts of a plant, or the colors on a color wheel. And then I'm just looking at the demonstration after demonstration after demonstration. But every time I'm saying, so do they understand the colors on a color wheel? Yeah, they do. That play they just put on absolutely showed me they understand that. So I just kind of keep focusing on that learning outcome. And honestly, as a teacher, it's exciting because you're not reading the same paper over and over and over, or grading the same worksheet over and over and over. You kind of get a variety. So again, when you have 30 students, you get to see a lot of different fun things. And sometimes, you know, I stop the video and come back and I watch it again because it was so much fun to watch the students perform. Or I've had some original songs. It's like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that student could sing. I've been amazed at some of the things my students can say and do. I've seen things built out of Play-Doh. I've watched stop motion type videos that come in that I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that student must have spent hours on that. But they're not complaining because they wanted to spend hours on that. And then they've got this reenactment of a scene from, you know, a Harry Potter book that they're reading that's all done in Legos, that they've done the stop motion, and they've labeled it, you know, the outcome was, can you show me the cause and effect? And they've acted out this whole cause and effect with Legos or Play-Doh and stop motion. And it's exciting. I wouldn't have maybe chosen to do that or even thought about doing that. But when I open that up to give those kids the options, they do these amazing things. And, you know, I think about myself as a learner, sometimes when I'm asked to do something, I'm thinking, I don't really want to do it that way. Honestly, I think I also learned this from my son. When my son was a 10th grader, he proposed a project that he wanted to do when he was studying Shakespeare. And by the way, he loved Shakespeare. He still loves Shakespeare. And he proposed a project, and he was told no, that they did not. He wanted to set up a Minecraft where there was a museum expert who went through, and he was going to build the Globe Theater, and the expert was going to take you on a tour through the Globe Theater. And she said, no, you can't do that. You can only make your diorama out of paper plates. And I'll tell you, it was the most hideous thing. As an educator, I was so embarrassed that he turned it in. But once his choice and his freedom and his creativity was stifled, it really changed how he approached something that he really loved. So I see a question here on how long do you give students to complete the board? I think it depends. I think it depends again on the learning outcome. There could be times that they're writing prompts and you give them the week, and there might be times that they have to only choose one thing off the board and you give them the day. I think it just depends on the intensity of what you're demonstrating. In my graduate classes, because I use a lot of technology and the technology is a learning curve for sometimes my students, I usually give them 2 weeks to complete a choice board. So I think those are just some things you consider that you know about your learners, and the, you know, kind of, is this a big culminating project at the end of a unit that you're giving them a choice board for, or are they just having some options on how to practice fractions tonight as homework, because you've been teaching fractions in class. So tonight they're going to go home and they might, you know, cut something for dinner into fractions, or they might find something in their home that they're taking a picture of that demonstrates fractions. If you're doing something like that, you could probably do that in a day. So it just really has to do with what your outcome is and where it's placed in your instruction. Absolutely. Could you flip this concept and use it as a bell ringer to front load information for new learning? Absolutely. Lay prior knowledge, measure prior knowledge. Absolutely. Although that again becomes your learning outcome. You're going to know, I'm checking for prior knowledge. So you need to be sure those things on the board are doing that. And I also think if I did it for front loading information to check for prior knowledge, I might not use a rubric to grade it, because obviously if I haven't taught it, the learning outcome is going to be different. In this respect, the learning outcome is more, do they have enough foundational information for me to move forward with instruction? So for this, I might give more of a class participation, because it's more of an assessment feedback to me on where they are before I teach, because I'm front loading. And I'm making sure they have enough information on, I always think about, creating rockets that are going to shoot off. Do they have enough information on the safety or the procedures we're going to do in class as we move forward? So I probably wouldn't have a formal rubric that measures the outcome more than participation points where they've demonstrated their understanding of what they need to know, because we're going to go forward from there. So just a little bit different thinking in how you would assess it. I think the front load's more of an assessment for you, as in knowing what needs to be taught. And the other end of it is more of a demonstration of knowledge to make sure they understand your outcome. Anything else? You're welcome to email me. I know it's 3 o'clock and we said an hour, so mreed@emporia.edu. I'm happy to answer any questions that way. You will receive an email for the link, and they will be posting the projects, the presentations, so you can go back and review them as well. So thank you for sharing your hour with me, and I look forward to seeing some of you again soon. Take care. Have a good day.